What is up, y'all? Welcome to another episode of FitBizU. I'm your host, Jill Coleman, and this is the first episode that I am recording after a month of not recording any podcast. I was very proud of myself because I did all of my batching for February in the month of January so that I could be in Australia for the entire month of February and not bring all my equipment with me. So we ended up doing a ton of episodes. I think we did 32 episodes recorded in January. So I am back. It is March. If you're listening to this, it is dropping on Monday, March 3rd. And we are back from Australia. And for those of you who maybe weren't following along, I was in the country of Australia for the entire month. Shout out to all of the amazing Jill Fit folks and Jill Fit fam in Australia. You guys hit me up. Lots of recommendations, lots of little tips and things like that about the country. And I just so appreciate it. Always love going to Australia. It's my sixth time there. And I was not necessarily on vacation. I was working a good amount. As you guys know, I've been keeping you in the loop. We're doing this sort of tiny offer funnel. We call it a tiny offer funnel. If you missed that, it was an episode that we recorded back in January on not doing a big launch in Q1 of this year, which is the first time in, 5 years that we have not done a big launch. And we did a little backdoor launch for FBA. So we welcomed a good amount of folks in that. We just did a very low-key promotion to our waitlisters. If you are not on the interest list for FBA, you can always join it at the link in the show notes. We are going to be doing a larger launch probably in the fall. No details on that yet, but if you are interested in your beginner to online business, or maybe just you didn't join FBA this round, make sure you're on the interest list for next time. But I did go ahead and pretty much worked every single day. So just so you guys can, I just give you like a little bit of a flow of how things went. Most days, so we were actually staying at Airbnbs. We were not at hotels, and we really wanted to spend a lot of time in each place. We actually were in Sydney for 8 days. We were in the Gold Coast for another 8 days, and we did the Sunshine Coast for 5 days, and then we spent 2 days in Byron Bay to finish off the trip. And the reason why is because we wanted to just relax into the trip. I think sometimes when you go on vacation, you feel this massive need to do everything and wake up early in the morning and have your day packed. And we knew that we didn't want to do things like that. Keith and I have traveled quite a bit together, and we're pretty good at traveling together, although this was what I call a relationship PR of how many days it was just the two of us, no other people for a full month. So we definitely had, so we learned some lessons about our relationship, which was great. Good communication, all that good stuff. But I tend to need a lot more downtime than he does. And also I need a lot of what I call time padding for work. So this is relevant to you guys. Maybe you are I need to do a social media post, or I need to get back to my clients, or I need to write programs or something. And sometimes if you think about it, doing a post doesn't necessarily have to take that long. Sometimes it takes a long time, but especially if you're just writing a quick caption, or you're just slapping some stuff on a reel, honestly, you could probably do it in 20 minutes. But for me, time padding is all of the time around the posting. It's thinking of the topic and trying to figure out how you want to say it, and editing the actual reel itself, and maybe doing a little bit of research on some things, maybe putting a couple ideas together to make the argument a little bit more interesting, or the point you're trying to make a little bit more lateral. So there's all this padding that needs to happen. So there were a few times when I just said to Keith, look, I just need 3 hours to just look at stuff. I have to just look at stuff. Especially for my my mastermind students and my legacy students, I do some editing for them. So for example, they'll send me, and this is March, so a lot of people are launching right now. So a lot of people are sending me their sales pages, their opt-in pages, and I bring those up on my desktop. I go line by line on those. I do line edits for them. And so there's a lot of things that I had to do on the back end, still having to work, but really just trying to manage also having someone else with me on this vacation who was truly in vacation. He didn't work at all. So for him, it was his annual vacation. And so most mornings I woke up around 6 a.m. ish, 6 or 7, which tended to be about noontime Pacific. So everyone was already working, which was great. And then I usually worked until about noon. And then from noon on, usually we had some activity, or we go to the beach, or we, work out or do whatever. And so I got into a nice cadence with that. So we got a lot of work done with our tiny offer funnel. We did a couple in-house promotions. We also did our FBA launch. So it wasn't like a vacation. People are oh, I'm sure you're enjoying your vacation. It's yes, I am, but I was probably working at least 4 to 6 hours a day. So I was, getting back to all my clients, all that kind of stuff. But, one of the things I'm really grateful for is the ability to have this sort of, work hard, rest hard cadence. I think a lot of people who maybe go to a job, you have to be at your desk at 9 a.m. and you have to kind of sit there until 5, whether you're doing a lot or you're not doing a lot. Maybe you're productive, maybe not productive. And that's the beautiful thing about having your own business is you can set your own schedule. And I think for a lot of folks, especially newer, this is kind of hard because you're like, well, I could be working all the time and there's an infinite number of things I could do in business. And the answer is yes, that is true, but you have to at some point settle into a little bit of a pace. I do think at some point you have to kind of settle into a pace that works for you. And luckily, I've been doing this such a long time now that I have this sort of internal motivation. I like stuff on my calendar. I like having launches coming up. I like having promotions coming up. I like having, freebies that I'm launching. And I think if you do struggle with productivity, maybe this would work for you as well. Like public declaration is one of my favorite things to do. I'm like, I'm doing this. The second I finish one promotion, I already look at my launch calendar. I know exactly what we have coming next. I'm like, okay, this is what we call anticipation phase. I'm in the runway for my next launch. Even if my next launch isn't for 2 or 3 months, I'm still technically in the launch runway for that next offer. So what does that look like? What does my cadence on social media look like? What does my email marketing need to look like? And then I sort of reverse engineer the entire runway for that launch. And so in that way, you should never be asking, like, what should I be posting or what should I be talking about? Because chances are you have something coming up. And if you don't, maybe take a little bit of time and decide, okay, what do I have coming up in Q2? What do I have coming up in Q3? What do I want to do? Do I want to do anything over the summer? Do I want to do anything around the holidays? And kind of just ask yourself, like, maybe a good cadence. And we'll do a whole separate episode on this, on like maybe launch calendar and stuff towards the end of the year. But having something at least once a quarter that is a revenue generating activity. It can be a one-on-one niche launch. It can be an 11-day launch for those of you in FBA and legacy, that formula. It can be a big launch or it can be just a one-on-one promotion. It can be a brand new lead magnet that you have. I think that if you are launching more than once every 2 months, then it's going to get a little crowded. But you could do something like the one-on-one niche launch once a month because that's like a 7-day promotion. And so if you change some of the criteria, and for those of you who know what the one-on-one niche launch is, maybe you've heard me use this before, it's like you can change the offer, you can change the niche, you can change the person you're speaking to or the person you're trying to attract to that offer. So I have clients that do the niche offer once a month, and then in between, maybe they have a couple big launches per year. And so the beautiful thing about that is when you declare it publicly to your audience, I don't care if you only get 10 views on your stories, there's some accountability there. It's like, I said this out loud, which tells me that's what I'm working towards now. So for example, if you don't have anything for a few months, maybe you could work on a big behind the scenes project. I tend to think those are a little bit harder to motivate to do, things like redoing my website or writing the copy for my website or figuring out my SEO, or like some of these bigger projects. We call them infinity projects at JillFit. Sometimes it's like they get put on the back burner because there is no immediacy to them. I work really well on deadlines, which is why I like public declaration, like, hey, this thing is coming on this date. I put that out there just as much for my audience as I do for myself, because I'm like, okay, now I have a date. Now I have something I'm working towards. So I know that I have all of these action items that need to happen before then. And so for us, not having any real big promotion in Q1, we still have to show up and work. In fact, we were working quite a bit on the team, but it was just a different type of work. It wasn't working towards a big launch. It was working on a lot of back end things. We have a lot of little promotions happening. And I will report, I'm excited to report that we are actually in the black for our tiny offer funnel, which is great, which means it's profitable. And we're in the process of starting to scale it up a little bit, and doing more ad traffic to it, things like that. So as we continue scaling that, of course, I'll keep you guys in the loop on that. Anyway, I wanted to do a quick episode today. This was actually going to be a different episode, but because we're almost 10 minutes into this episode, I am going to do a different one today that's actually going to be a shorter episode. I want to share with you guys something that has been working tremendously well for me on Instagram. And I'm putting in the title of this episode, March 2025, because this is something that is a hack. I will say this is a hack or a gimmick or whatever you want to call it. It is something that is being rewarded right now by the algorithm gods on Instagram. And the reason why I'm putting the date here is because chances are this is not going to be working in 6 months. So I do want to put it here. So this is a timely episode for you guys. But one thing that has been working really well. So you guys have heard me talk about ManyChat before. ManyChat is a funnel automation that happens in your DMs. So you guys have seen this. If you haven't been using it, you've seen this as a user, I'm sure of it. Basically, it's drop the word below, right? Drop the keyword X, Y, and Z below, and I'll send you a direct message with all of details for this thing. So when someone drops a keyword, you can set up your ManyChat automation to collect their email address. And if you collect their email address, then you will go ahead and deliver whatever it is that you are giving them in their email. So chances are most likely this is going to be working for a freebie of some kind, a lead magnet of some kind. So you can collect their email address right on the platform, which is nice. You don't have to send people to a link in your bio. You don't have to send them to a landing page off of the platform. So the reason why I do like ManyChat and why it does seem to be working, although I do think at some point this will probably stop working, like everything will stop working at some point, but right now it seems to be still working. But it also depends on, when I say working, it really depends on how you frame it up, which is what I'm going to talk about today. So logistically, the person drops the keyword and you can set it up to where you capture their email right in the DM, which is what we do. So if you went to any of my posts right now and you put the word WL, like waitlist, WL, on any of my posts, you would get a automatic message from me basically having you opt in for the FBA waitlist. It's an evergreen call to action. We have it all the time. It's on my like start here post, on my pinned on my profile and all that kind of stuff. And we would just say, hey, great, you're interested in this. Awesome. What's your email address? Great, we got you. And then we kind of confirm that we have you on the waitlist. If you are delivering a freebie, you can capture their email. And then what happens is the email provider that you're using, something like ConvertKit or Aweber, or we use ActiveCampaign or Kajabi, is connected to ManyChat. So it automatically adds the person to your email automation system, and it tags them with whatever tag you set up for the freebie. And then it delivers the freebie automatically with that first follow-up message that you've created. So the first follow-up message might say, hey, you're in, like blah, blah, blah. Here's the freebie that you opted in for. It's attached to this email, or click here to download it or whatever. And so most people are using ManyChat for freebies to get people off of social media and get them onto their email list. You can also set it up to not capture their email. Like, and if you're just like, I can't figure this out, it's too tech heavy for me, you could set it up to where all they have to do is say, yes, I'm interested. And then you could just drop the link to your opt-in page. So your opt-in page would be your sign up form for the freebie. So you create your sign up form on Kajabi if you have it, or on ConvertKit if you have it, or Aweber. All of these email providers have the ability for you to create opt-in forms within the platform. And then you just send the URL in the DM. You're like, here's the link to join. So then they go to the opt-in page. I don't like this as much because not everyone who goes to the opt-in page opts in. Now, not everyone who drops the keyword opts in either, but we have seen that the opt-in for people dropping the keyword and then us collecting their email address in the DM is converting higher than sending people to an opt-in page, right? If I'm sending people to an opt-in page, the chance that they might read something that they are like, that's not for me or whatever, we could lose them. So my preference is to capture their email within the DM. And by the way, you guys, like, this is not a manipulative thing. This is what we call permission-based marketing. People are literally consenting to get this thing. I use it all the time. I'm dropping the keyword on all kinds of people's posts because I'm learning all the time, right? So I have people that I learn from, and I'm like, cool, I want that thing. I drop the keyword too. It's not like it's this thing that people are using if they're creators, right? Creators are using it too to grab things from other creators that they want. So I do this all the time. So it's not like a better or worse thing. It doesn't mean you're like tricking someone. They still have to opt in. When I say they have to opt in, the first message you get in ManyChat says, hey, so-and-so, would you like to receive this thing? And they have to click a button that says yes. That's them consenting to receive it. And then you say, great, what's your best email address? Then they drop the email address and you say, awesome. Go ahead and check your email within the next couple of minutes and you will receive the download or whatever it is that you're doing. So all of this is simply a way to remove friction from getting someone's email. Now, just because you have ManyChat set up doesn't mean you're automatically going to get more leads, right? So it's like, cool, we have this system now that makes it more seamless for someone to opt in. They don't have to go off the platform. They don't have to read a long ass opt-in page, all that kind of stuff. They can do it right within. And this is what I love about it too as a user. I love that I don't have to get off the thing. I'm like, yeah, here's my email address. Cool. It's in my inbox. I can look at it later if I want. And so, but we have to frame it up. So this is what seems to be working really well right now. Two things, one on the main feed and one in stories. So the one that seems to be working in stories is letting your stories expire. So letting full 24 hours go by, let your stories expire. I try and give it a couple hours after it expires before I post again. And then I post 2 slides. The first slide is something where people have to touch the slide. So typically, when I say touch, I mean interact with it. Like there's typically a poll of some kind on the first slide. The first slide typically is going to have a little bit of social proof, or it's going to ask a question. And the question is going to lead people to say that they want your opt-in. So, for example, I've seen people use this. Molly Galbraith of Girls Gone Strong uses this all the time. If you guys follow her and her stories, she does a really great job with this. The first story will ask if you want something. So, for example, let's say you have a high protein recipe guide, right? You would say something like, when I say social proof, or maybe a case study, or something from your own story, you might say something like, over the last 6 months, I've been really diligently tracking my protein, and I've managed to get at least 30 to 50 grams of protein every single meal. And it has not been super hard, and I definitely don't feel deprived. Would you be interested in learning exactly how I've been doing this? So you're asking them a question. You're sharing a win. It can be your win, could be a client win. You're sharing something that is working for you personally or something that's working for your clients. And then you say, would you be interested in learning exactly how to do this? And then you put a poll, and the poll has two options. And here's the key. Both of those options should be in the affirmative. So, for example, you might have something like yes, and then you might have like, I'll definitely need to know that at some point, right? Or absolutely, or duh, right? So both of the options on the poll should be in the positive. They should both be in the affirmative. Unless you're just like, I really want to know who in my audience doesn't want these protein recipes. If you're like curious about who, like maybe people don't want it, then sure, you can have a no or a negative, but typically you want them to both be positive. What this does is when people interact with the first slide, especially after your stories have expired, it tells Instagram that this is a relevant story. People are interacting with it. They like it. They're engaging with it. And what it will do is it will push your story to the left. So more people will see it and you will get more views. Now you post the second story. So that's the first story. You open up a loop of curiosity. Do you want this thing? And then the second story has the call to action using the ManyChat. So the call to action might say something like, I just put all of my best high protein recipes and meal prep tips in my brand new Protein Plus blueprint. And then it says, reply the word protein on this story and I'll send it to you directly. So the first slide opens up a curiosity of something. You share some kind of win, your client or you, something you're doing differently, something's working well for you. And you ask people, would you also want to learn this? Would you like to learn how to do this? Do you want access to this thing? And then they have to answer yes, right? And so both of the poll answers are affirmative. Second has the call to action using the ManyChat. So we've used this a couple of times. We're actually doing a promotion right now, 20 ways to make $2,000. Maybe you guys have seen it on my Instagram. And I think with just like 2 or 3 stories, we've gotten like 500 opt-ins because it just opens up, and it's true, by the way. It's not like I'm like making this up. It's like, this is actually what happened. And this is the system, or this is the blueprint or the strategy that I use to do this thing, or like my client did this thing and here's what they used. And so you're giving a little bit of social proof, opening up curiosity, getting people to buy in by clicking on the thing, engaging with the post. And then the second slide has the opt-in, has the reply, the word below, and get the thing. And so that's working really well. I would try that at least once a week. So if you have an opt-in of some kind, you have some kind of freebie, I would use that at least once a week. The second thing that has been working really well, obviously also ManyChat related, is on the main feed. And you have to think to yourself, okay, if I have this freebie that I want to promote, and the reason why we're even talking about this, you guys, because I've just noticed from my students, it is way harder to get opt-ins than it's ever been. And this makes sense, right? People are just really protective of their inboxes now. And so it's like, all right, we got to try a little bit harder. We got to just have better messaging. We got to really figure out how we can open up the curiosity to get people excited to actually get the download or get the opt-in or whatever. Like we need to actually do the work. Just because it's free doesn't mean people will want it. Just because it's free, it has to feel high value. And it also has to have some utility. Like, why would I want this thing? So this goes to the second strategy that's working really well. This is on main feed. Using a carousel post to tell a story that leads the consumer to the conclusion that they need the opt-in. So for example, if you are promoting a let's stick with the high protein recipe guide. If you're promoting a high protein recipe guide, tell me a story about why this exists. Tell me the origin story of why you created this. This can be a story about a client. This can be a story about you. Tell me something where you were struggling beforehand. Like, what were you struggling with? Maybe it was hunger, maybe it was cravings, maybe it was, I don't know, like satiety, whatever it was. Maybe you had an obsessive relationship with food. Maybe you couldn't lose weight. Maybe you couldn't build muscle. I don't know what it was. There's some kind of struggle. And then there was a moment at which you changed your action item. Maybe you found a protein that you like. So for example, right now, it's just personal, but I got Keith a Ninja Creamy for Christmas. And Ninja Creamy, you guys know, is like basically how to make protein ice cream. And for me, one of my biggest struggles over the last couple of years has been getting enough protein because I'm just not that hungry. Like I just don't get super hungry anymore. And so I usually have like 2 big meals a day. And if I'm lucky, I'm hitting 100 grams. And I know for someone my size, I need to be getting more than 100 grams of protein. So like selfishly, I've been actually using the Ninja Creamy at night just to get like an extra 30 grams of protein. And so that's like a different action, right? I had to buy this ice cream maker so that I could make protein taste good and actually want to eat it to get my protein up. So you could tell a story like that that says, and now that I'm getting 150 grams of protein a day, it feels easy. I don't feel stuffed. I actually like the protein I'm making. That's why I put together my high protein guide to help women just like I was who were really struggling to get protein. Comment the word below and get my free high protein recipe guide. So you have to, over the course of a carousel post, tell a story. Now, the way I do this logistically is I actually write the story out of my notes app. So I get in my phone or I get on my computer and I open up the notes app and I write the story. I just write it as if I'm writing a caption. And then I break up the caption into enough text for each carousel. Now, you usually want the carousel to be probably at least like 6 to 8 slides so that they interact with it enough that the algorithm tells Instagram basically, that the post tells Instagram that the post is relevant because people are swiping. Remember, the longer someone spends on your post, the more relevant Instagram will see your post. So if they are scrolling because they are reading something, right? This is the natural way that we read is we like to swipe, right? It's like how we read a book. We go to the next page, we go to the next page. And so if you can keep someone swiping because they want to hear the end of the story, right? What happened? They want to know what was the outcome? What happened at the end of the story? That's why you write it as a story. You don't write it as like, here's 8 tips about protein. That will probably tank. Instead, it's a story about how you went from doing 80 grams of protein a day to 150 grams of protein a day and made it feel effortless and you actually enjoyed yourself or whatever that storyline is. So you tell the story, and then the last slide has the call to action to drop the word. Now, what you're doing is creating context for the opt in. If you're just like, hey guys, do you want my high protein guide? Drop it below. Like, it's just that call to action is no context. It's like, why would I want this guide? But if I tell you a story about how I used to really struggle with it, my hunger and my cravings were through the roof, and I used to binge every weekend and whatever, and then I finally doubled my protein easily by doing X, Y, and Z, now I'm going to show you how to do it. If you're someone who also is struggling with this, comment the word below and I'll give you my best practice, right? That's really what you're saying is like, here's my best practice. I put everything that I wish I had known before I started into this guide. Comment the word below to get it. So all you're doing is just creating context. This is called messaging. Messaging is like a big business word that basically just says, telling people why they should give a shit and doing it in a way that feels authentic and doing it in a way that feels organic. If I was just like, hey, you need this high protein guide, like that just would not work, right? But if I tell a story and people understand the context of why they should care about getting more protein, now all of a sudden it feels like a much easier sell because I gave you all of that story and all that background. So write the story out in your notes app, just as if you're telling a story in a caption or in an email, and then break it up and then put little pieces on the carousel. Now, I do like the back of the carousel to be a photo of you or different photos of you. So for example, maybe you have like, if you're telling a story of, maybe your diet history, maybe you have some old pictures you want to include. It just makes the post more interesting. It makes people stay on the post a little bit longer. The images are maybe capturing their attention because they're older of you, or you look young in them, or you look different in them in some way, shape, or form. And I do recommend, sometimes you can have the same image, but what's been working well for me is having different images in each one of them. And so you do want the carousel to be a minimum of 6 slides. Obviously, it can be up to 20 slides, but the sweet spot for me has been 6 to 10 slides. It's been that working the best for me, changing out, having a different photo on each background, and then just having literally, I just make these right on Instagram stories. I upload a picture onto Instagram stories. You can actually do this right in you can put text on your post now as well. But I just upload the photo I want into Instagram stories. I just type the words on the Instagram story and I save the story. And then I upload all of them into a carousel post on my main feed. So if you go back, you can see a couple of these. A couple of them have done really well. Drop the word below. Again, I give context. There was one I did with Danny J and I going to Australia and making the money to go to Australia with a low ticket offer. And the low ticket offer was $27. And I linked it to my tiny offer, my like mini offer, 20 ways to make $2,000. And we had a whole bunch. I think we had like hundreds of people comment on that post. And so those are two things that right now in March 2025 are working to get people to actually care about your opt-ins. If you're struggling with lead gen, yes, we need to look at your messaging. Yes, we need to look at like, is this something people actually want? We have to look at how we're talking about it, but then we have to actually tee it up. And that's what both of these strategies do. It just tees it up and then it adds a ManyChat automation to make it feel a little bit easier for folks to get it. Good. All right. Hopefully that is helpful for you guys. And thank you for being here as usual. And it's good to be back. And hope you guys have a great week. And I'll see you in the next one.